My name is Emma Reid, and I'm 32 years old. Before I start, I need you to know something. Drop your city in the comments below. If you've ever had family turn on you when someone died, hit subscribe. This story begins at my father's funeral, when my brother stood up and said words that made my blood freeze. The chapel was full. Dad had been loved. Thomas Reid, 68 years old, gone from a heart attack that came without warning. I sat in the front row, my daughter Lily beside me, her small hand gripping mine. My brother Marcus sat across the aisle with his wife Victoria, both dressed in expensive black that somehow looked like a costume. The service ended. People filed past the casket. Then, Marcus stood up and cleared his throat loud enough that everyone stopped moving. He smiled that smile I'd learned to hate over 30 years. Before everyone leaves, Marcus announced, I want you all to know the house will be sold within the month. Fresh start for everyone. The room went silent. My hands went numb. Then a man I'd never seen before stood up in the back row and said 5 words that changed everything. That's not what he wanted. The stranger walked forward slowly. He was maybe 60, gray hair, sharp eyes, carrying a leather briefcase that looked older than me. Marcus's smile faltered but held. I'm sorry, Marcus said, voice dripping with false politeness. Who are you? James Patterson. Your father's attorney for the past 15 years. I felt something shift in my chest. Dad had an attorney? Marcus had told me 2 weeks ago that Dad died without a will, that everything would be split 50-50 according to state law, that selling the house was the cleanest solution. Marcus's face went tight. Mr. Patterson, I appreciate you coming, but family business should stay private. Your father specifically requested I attend this funeral, Patterson said calmly. He wanted witnesses present when his will was read. Marcus laughed, but it sounded hollow. There is no will. Dad told me years ago he wasn't making one. Patterson opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick envelope. Thomas Reid executed his last will and testament on March 8, 2024. Witnessed, notarized, legally binding. March 8th, that was 3 weeks before Dad died. 3 weeks before the heart attack that Marcus said came out of nowhere. 6 months earlier, everything had been different. Dad called me on a Tuesday night, voice shaking in a way that scared me. Emma, I need to talk to you about something serious. I'd driven straight to the house. The 2-story colonial in Riverside where I grew up. Dad met me at the door, looking 10 years older than when I'd seen him the week before. We sat in the kitchen, the same table where Mom used to make us do homework. She'd been gone 8 years now, cancer taking her slowly while Dad held her hand every single day. Marcus came by yesterday, Dad said. He wants me to sell the house and move into a retirement community. Says I'm too old to maintain it alone. My stomach dropped. Dad, you're only 68. You're healthy. I know, his hands shook around his coffee mug, but he was very insistent. Said he and Victoria have been looking at places for me. Nice places with activities and meal plans. Did you tell him no? Dad looked at me with eyes full of something I couldn't name then. Now I know it was fear. He said if I didn't agree voluntarily, he'd start proceedings to have me declared incompetent. The words hung in the air like poison. I couldn't breathe for a moment. He can't do that. You're completely fine. He says I'm forgetting things, making poor decisions. He mentioned the time I left the stove on last month. Dad's voice cracked. It was once, Emma, just once. I reached across the table and took his hands. Dad, Marcus is manipulating you. You left the burner on by accident. That doesn't make you incompetent. But I could see the doubt in Dad's eyes. Marcus had always been good at planting seeds, at making people question themselves. He'd done it to me our entire childhood, convincing me I was too emotional, too dramatic, too much. There's more, Dad said quietly. He wants power of attorney, says it's just to help with bills and medical appointments. But Emma, once he has that, he controls everything. That's when I knew this wasn't about Dad's safety. This was about the house, about money, about control. The house was worth almost $1 million now, sitting in a neighborhood that had gentrified over the past decade. I'd spent the next month helping Dad quietly. We found James Patterson through a friend's recommendation, a lawyer who specialized in elder law and estate planning. Dad met with him twice, alone at first, then with me present. Patterson was thorough, asking questions about Dad's health, his memory, his daily routines. He gave Dad cognitive tests that Dad passed easily. "Your father is completely competent," Patterson told me after the second meeting. "What your brother is threatening is elder abuse. We need to protect your father's assets and his autonomy." We created a plan. Dad would execute a will, make it crystal clear what he wanted. He'd also create a living trust, putting the house in it so Marcus couldn't challenge ownership easily. And he'd give me durable power of attorney, not Marcus. "Don't tell your brother any of this," Patterson warned. "People like him escalate when they feel they're losing control." Dad signed everything on March 8th. 3 weeks later, he was dead. And Marcus had lied about everything from the moment it happened. Now I understood why Dad's voice had shaken that Tuesday night. He'd known Marcus was dangerous. Back in the funeral chapel, Marcus's face had gone from confident to pale. Victoria touched his arm, but he shook her off. "This is inappropriate," Marcus said loudly. "Reading a will at a funeral in front of everyone? That's not how this works." "Your father's instructions were very specific," Patterson replied. "He wanted this done publicly, with family and friends present. He wanted witnesses." My heart pounded. Around us, people were standing frozen, sensing drama but not understanding it yet. My Aunt Carol stood near the wall, her face confused. Dad's best friend Harold sat in the third row, watching Marcus with narrowed eyes. Marcus turned to me, and his expression was pure venom. "Did you know about this?" "I knew Dad made a will," I said quietly. "I didn't know he wanted it read here." "You poisoned him against me." Marcus's voice rose. "You manipulated a sick old man when he was vulnerable." "Mr. Reid," Patterson's voice cut through sharp and cold. "Your father was evaluated by 2 independent physicians. He was completely mentally competent. Those evaluations are part of the record." Marcus opened his mouth, then closed it. I watched him calculate, trying to find an angle. Patterson pulled out papers and began reading. His voice was steady, professional, filling the chapel with words that changed everything. "I, Thomas Alexander Reid, being of sound mind and body, do hereby declare this my last will and testament. I revoke all previous wills and codicils." People shifted in their seats. This was uncomfortable, watching family business unfold like this. But they stayed. Dad had asked for witnesses, and they were giving him that. "To my son Marcus Reid, I leave the sum of $50,000 and my blessing to build his own life without relying on inheritance." 50,000. The house alone was worth 20 times that. Marcus made a strangled sound. "To my daughter Emma Reid, I leave my house at 847 Riverside Drive, all its contents and the remainder of my estate to be held in trust for her and her daughter Lily." The relief hit me so hard I almost cried. But Patterson wasn't done. "I make this unequal distribution for the following reasons, which I want read publicly to prevent future contest." Oh, Dad. He'd known Marcus would fight this. So he'd left an explanation, a defense from beyond the grave. Patterson continued reading Dad's words, and I heard my father's voice in every line. "Marcus has spent the past 2 years pressuring me to sell my home and give him control of my finances. He threatened to have me declared incompetent when I refused. He told me I was a burden, that I couldn't be trusted to make my own decisions." Marcus stood frozen, his face bright red. People were staring at him now, understanding dawning. "Emma has been my support system since her mother died. She visits 3 times a week, helps with household tasks I can no longer manage easily, and includes me in her life and Lily's life. She has never asked me for money or suggested I change my living situation." My throat burned with tears I wouldn't let fall. Not yet. Most importantly, when Marcus attempted to isolate me and take control, Emma helped me find legal counsel and protected my right to make my own choices. She treated me like a competent adult, not a problem to be managed. Patterson looked up. "That's the end of the explanation. The will goes on to detail the trust structure and other provisions." Marcus found his voice. "This is garbage. He was manipulated. Emma got to him when he was weak and scared." "Actually," Patterson said calmly, "your father anticipated that accusation. He made video recordings explaining his wishes. Those recordings include timestamps and show him answering questions about his mental state, his understanding of his assets, and his reasons for this distribution." Video recordings. Dad had been so thorough, building a wall Marcus couldn't break through. I want to see them, Marcus demanded. Now. They're part of the probate record. You'll receive copies when the will is filed. Patterson closed his briefcase with a sharp click. You have every right to contest this will, Mr. Reid. But I should warn you that your father also documented your threats, including text messages and voicemails. If you contest and lose, the will includes a clause that reduces your inheritance to $1. The air went out of Marcus. I watched it happen, watched him realize Dad had outmaneuvered him completely. Victoria pulled at Marcus's arm. Let's go, she whispered. People are staring. They were. Every person in that chapel had just watched Marcus get exposed as someone who'd threatened his own elderly father, who'd planned to take everything. Marcus looked at me one last time. This isn't over, Emma. Then they left, Victoria practically dragging him out the side door. The chapel cleared slowly after that. People approached me with condolences that felt heavier now, weighted with the knowledge of what they'd witnessed. Aunt Carol hugged me tight. I never trusted Marcus, she whispered. Your mother didn't either. She saw something in him. Harold, Dad's best friend, squeezed my shoulder. Tom told me he was protecting you. I'm glad he did. After everyone left, Patterson approached me with his briefcase and a gentle expression. Your father was very clear about his wishes, he said. But I need to prepare you. Marcus will likely contest this will despite the penalty clause. People like him don't accept losing easily. I know. My voice felt small in the empty chapel. He's been like this our whole lives. Patterson handed me a card. Call me tomorrow. We'll go through everything properly. For now, go home. Be with your daughter. Your father protected you as much as he could, but the fight isn't over yet. I took Lily's hand and walked out into the gray afternoon. The house, Dad's house, my house now, waited for us. But I felt Marcus's words echoing. This isn't over. 3 months earlier, before Dad died, I'd noticed Marcus changing tactics. He stopped being overtly aggressive and started being helpful instead. He'd show up at Dad's house with groceries, with offers to fix things, with suggestions delivered in a cheerful voice that felt like poison wrapped in sugar. Dad, I found this great guy who can replace your furnace, Marcus said one Saturday. He's giving us a family discount. I already put down a deposit. Dad looked at me nervously. We'd just had the furnace serviced. It was fine. Marcus, Dad doesn't need a new furnace, I said carefully. Emma, don't be ridiculous. The system is 20 years old. It could die any winter and leave Dad freezing. Marcus smiled at Dad. You trust me to handle this, right? I know about these things. I'd watched Dad struggle, torn between not wanting conflict and not wanting unnecessary work done. Finally he'd said, let me think about it. Marcus's smile had frozen. There's nothing to think about. The deposit is already down. This is happening. That's when I'd stepped in, called the furnace company, and canceled the work. The deposit turned out to be non-existent. Marcus had lied to pressure Dad into agreeing. When Marcus found out I'd canceled his fake furnace replacement, he'd called me screaming. You're undermining me at every turn. Dad needs help, and you're too selfish to see it. Dad needs to be treated with respect, I'd shot back. Not managed like a child or a problem. You're just mad because you know once he's in a proper facility, you won't be able to keep playing the devoted daughter. Everyone will see you only came around because Mom made you feel guilty. That lie had hurt, sharp and precise. Marcus knew how to find weak spots. But I'd kept my voice steady. If you contact that furnace company again or any other contractor without Dad's explicit written permission, I'll file a police report for fraud. Marcus had laughed, but it sounded nervous. You can't prove anything. Actually, I recorded our last conversation, the one where you admitted you never put down a deposit. The line had gone dead. Marcus hadn't tried the helpful act again after that. Instead, he'd gone quiet for 2 weeks. Then Dad had died suddenly, and Marcus had swooped in immediately, taking control before I could even think clearly. Now I understood that silence had been Marcus regrouping, planning his next move. The day after the funeral, I went to the house. My house now, though it still felt strange to think that way. I stood in the driveway, looking up at it. The white siding needed painting. The shutters were faded. But the garden Mom had planted was still thriving. The rose bushes she'd loved blooming pink and red. Inside smelled like Dad, like coffee and old books and the cedar cologne he'd worn for 30 years. I walked through slowly, touching familiar things. The couch where we'd watched movies, the dining table where we'd had dinners every Sunday, the photos on the mantle of Mom and Dad, young and happy. Then I noticed something wrong. Dad's office looked disturbed. Papers were scattered. Drawers hung open. My stomach dropped. Someone had been here, searching for something. I called Patterson immediately. He answered on the first ring. "The house has been broken into," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "Nothing stolen, but Dad's office was searched. I'm coming over now. Don't touch anything else." Patterson arrived 20 minutes later, with a calm efficiency that steadied me. We walked through Dad's office together, and he photographed everything. "Your father kept copies of all important documents in a safe deposit box," Patterson said. "But someone was looking for the originals, probably hoping to destroy evidence of the will or the trust." "Marcus has a key to this house," I said. "Dad gave him one years ago." "Change the locks today, and I'm installing a security camera system here tomorrow." Patterson looked at me seriously. "Your brother is desperate, Miss Reid. Desperate people make dangerous choices." That night, I changed every lock. The locksmith worked until 10 p.m., replacing the front door, back door, and garage locks. I kept Lily with me the whole time, not wanting to let her out of my sight. She was 8 years old, too young to understand why Uncle Marcus was suddenly scary, why Grandpa's death had brought out something ugly in our family. "Mom, why is Uncle Marcus mad at us?" she asked while we ate pizza on the living room floor, surrounded by the boxes I'd started packing from Dad's things. "Sometimes grown-ups disagree about important things," I told her. "Uncle Marcus wanted something that wasn't his to take. Grandpa made sure we were protected." "Grandpa was smart," Lily said firmly. "Yeah, baby, he really was." 2 days later, Marcus filed to contest the will. Patterson called me with the news, his voice resigned. "He's claiming undue influence, lack of mental capacity, and fraud. All standard challenges, none of them likely to succeed, given your father's documentation." "How long will this take?" "Months, possibly over a year. He's also filed an emergency motion to prevent you from selling or modifying the house until the contest is resolved." My chest tightened. "Can he do that?" "A judge will decide. The hearing is next week." "But Emma, this is going to get uglier before it gets better. I need you to prepare for that." Marcus had money, a successful investment firm, expensive lawyers. I had a modest salary from my job as a school librarian and a daughter to support. The thought of a long legal battle made me sick. But then I thought about Dad, about how he'd planned everything carefully to protect me. I couldn't let Marcus win by making me too afraid or too tired to fight. "What do I need to do?" I asked Patterson. "Keep records of everything. Every contact Marcus makes, every threat, every attempt to access the property. We're building a case for harassment." That night, Marcus called me 15 times. I didn't answer. He left voicemails that started pleading and ended threatening. The emergency hearing arrived too fast. I sat in the courtroom with Patterson, watching Marcus and his lawyer, a sharp woman in an expensive suit, present their case. "Your Honor, my client is simply trying to preserve family assets while serious questions about the will's validity are investigated," Marcus's lawyer said smoothly. "Allowing the defendant to modify or sell the property could cause irreparable harm." Judge Morrison, a tired-looking woman in her 50s, listened with the expression of someone who'd seen this drama 1,000 times. "Miss Reid has made no indication she plans to sell," Patterson countered. "This motion is punitive, designed to prevent her from living in her own home or making necessary repairs. The will is valid, properly executed, and my client is the legal owner." The judge looked at Marcus. "Mr. Reid, do you have evidence your sister plans to sell or damage the property?" Marcus stood, and I saw him put on the mask he wore for authority figures, the reasonable concerned brother. "Your Honor, I'm just trying to protect my father's legacy. Emma has financial problems. She might be forced to sell quickly, without considering all options." That was a lie. I'd never discussed my finances with Marcus. He was inventing problems to justify his interference. Patterson handed the judge documents. "Miss Reid's finances are stable. She has no debt beyond a modest car payment. This is harassment, pure and simple." Judge Morrison read through Patterson's documents, her expression growing sharper. She looked at Marcus over her reading glasses. "Mr. Reid, I'm denying your emergency motion. The property belongs to your sister under a valid will. She has every right to live there and maintain it as she sees fit. Marcus's face went dark red. But Your Honor, she could. I've made my ruling. If you have evidence of actual wrongdoing, present it in your will contest. Until then, stop wasting the court's time with emergency motions. We left the courthouse, and I felt the first real breath I'd taken in days. But as we reached the parking lot, Marcus appeared, blocking my path to Patterson's car. You think you won? Marcus's voice was low, vibrating with rage. Dad was weak and you took advantage. Everyone's going to see what you really are. Mr. Reid, step back, Patterson said firmly. You're crossing into harassment. I'm talking to my sister. Marcus didn't move. Emma, you have one chance to make this right. Sell the house, split the money evenly, and I'll drop the contest. Otherwise, I'll drag this out until you're buried in legal fees. I looked at my brother, this person who'd made my childhood miserable with his cruelty disguised as jokes, who'd tried to control Dad in his final years, who was now threatening me in a courthouse parking lot. No, I said simply. Marcus's expression twisted. Then he walked away without another word. The next morning, I woke to pounding on my door. I grabbed my phone, ready to call 911, but when I looked through the window, it was Aunt Carol standing on my porch looking frantic. I opened the door. What's wrong? Marcus is telling everyone you forged Dad's will, Carol said, pushing past me into the living room. He called me last night, said you manipulated Dad when he was dying, that you stole everything that should have been split fairly. My stomach dropped. That's not true. Dad made the will months before he died. He was evaluated by doctors, everything is documented. I know, honey, I believe you. Carol took my hands. But not everyone does. Marcus is very convincing. He's reaching out to every family member, painting you as this greedy daughter who swooped in at the end. This was Marcus's pattern. When he couldn't win legally, he'd destroy reputations. He'd done it before with business competitors, with ex-girlfriends, with anyone who got in his way. I have proof, I said. Patterson has everything documented. Then you need to share that proof. Don't let Marcus control the narrative. Carol squeezed my hands. Your father trusted you. Now you have to trust that the truth will win. She was right. I'd been quiet, letting Patterson handle everything legally. But Marcus was fighting in the court of public opinion, and silence made me look guilty. That afternoon, I did something Dad had recorded for exactly this reason. I posted one of his videos online, the one where he explained his will in his own words. The video showed Dad in his office, the date stamp visible in the corner. He looked directly at the camera, his voice steady and clear. My name is Thomas Reid. Today is March 8, 2024. I'm making this recording to explain my wishes regarding my estate. I am of sound mind. I have been evaluated by Dr. Helen Foster and Dr. Richard Blake, both of whom can confirm my mental competency. Dad took a breath, and I could see the pain in his eyes even through the screen. My son Marcus has spent 2 years pressuring me to sell my home. He's threatened to have me declared incompetent. He's told me I'm too old to make my own decisions. These actions have caused me great distress and have damaged our relationship beyond repair. The video continued for 10 minutes, Dad explaining every decision, every reason, his voice never wavering. He ended by looking straight into the camera and saying, If Marcus contests this will, it's not because he's concerned about fairness. It's because he wants control and money he didn't earn. I'm leaving the house and the majority of my estate to Emma because she treated me with dignity and respect when Marcus treated me like a burden. The video spread fast. Family members called me, apologizing for doubting me, expressing shock at Marcus's behavior. Some said they'd suspected something was wrong but hadn't wanted to interfere. Marcus called me screaming. You had no right to post that, that's private. Dad made it specifically so people would see the truth, I said calmly. He knew you'd lie about him after he died. I'm going to sue you for defamation. Dad was telling the truth. You can't sue someone for defamation when they're stating facts. I kept my voice level, not giving him the emotional reaction he wanted. You threatened him, Marcus. You tried to take his independence. That's all documented. Marcus hung up, but an hour later, Patterson called with news. Marcus's lawyer just contacted me. They want to negotiate a settlement. My heart jumped. What kind of settlement? They're willing to drop the will contest if you pay Marcus $200,000 from the estate. $200,000, more than the 50 Dad had left him, but far less than half the estate's value. Marcus was realizing he couldn't win, but didn't want to walk away with nothing. "What do you think?" I asked. Patterson was quiet for a moment. "Financially, it might be worth it to avoid a long court battle. But Emma, your father left very specific instructions. He wanted Marcus to get exactly $50,000. Paying more rewards his behavior." I thought about it for 2 days. The practical part of me wanted to settle, to end this nightmare and move on. But every time I considered it, I heard Dad's voice from that video. If Marcus contests this will, it's not because he's concerned about fairness. Dad had known this would happen. He'd prepared me for it, and he'd trusted me to stand firm. I called Patterson. "Tell them no, we're going to trial if necessary." "Are you sure? This could take another year." "I'm sure. Dad left instructions for a reason. I'm not going to ignore them because Marcus is throwing a tantrum." Patterson's voice warmed. "Your father would be proud of that decision." The settlement offer was rejected. Marcus's response was immediate and vicious. He filed additional motions, demanded depositions, tried to drag Lily into it by requesting she be interviewed about my fitness as a parent. That last one made Patterson furious. "He's weaponizing your daughter. That's going to backfire spectacularly when we get in front of a judge." But it still hurt, knowing Marcus would use an 8-year-old to hurt me. It confirmed what I'd always known, but tried to ignore. My brother had no limits, no line he wouldn't cross to get what he wanted. The trial date was set for 6 months out. In the meantime, life continued in strange limbo. I lived in Dad's house with Lily, but it didn't feel like home yet. It felt like borrowed space, temporary until Marcus's contest was resolved. Then something unexpected happened. Harold, Dad's best friend, called me one evening. "Emma, I need to tell you something about your brother. Something that might help your case." We met at a coffee shop. Harold looked uncomfortable, guilty even. 10 years ago, Marcus borrowed $50,000 from your dad," Harold said. "Tom told me about it in confidence. Marcus needed it for a business deal that went bad. He promised to pay it back within a year." "Did he?" I already knew the answer. "Never paid back a cent. And when Tom brought it up a few years later, Marcus claimed it was a gift, not a loan. They had a huge fight about it. Your mother had to mediate." $50,000. The exact amount Dad had left Marcus in the will. "Do you have any proof of this?" I asked. Harold pulled out his phone. "Tom sent me emails about it. He was worried about Marcus's finances, about whether he should loan him more money. I told him no." He showed me the emails. They were dated, detailed, clearly showing the loan and Marcus's refusal to repay it. Patterson would love this. With Harold's evidence, Patterson filed an amended response to Marcus's contest. We now had proof that Dad's $50,000 bequest was actually generous, considering Marcus still owed that amount from a previous loan. Marcus's lawyer tried to suppress the evidence, but Judge Morrison allowed it. At the hearing, her expression was cold as she addressed Marcus directly. "Mr. Reid, these emails show your father loaned you $50,000 that you never repaid. Is that accurate?" Marcus shifted in his seat. "That was years ago. It was complicated." "It seems quite simple," the judge said. "Your father loaned you money, you refused to repay it. Now you're contesting a will that leaves you the exact amount you still owed him. That doesn't suggest undue influence. It suggests your father was being remarkably fair under the circumstances." Marcus's lawyer tried to redirect. "Your Honor, the loan situation is separate from the estate distribution. My client's concern is that his sister manipulated." "I've heard enough." Judge Morrison cut her off. "I'm ruling on the will contest today. Based on the evidence presented, Thomas Reid was clearly competent when he executed his will. He was evaluated by 2 independent physicians. He made video recordings explaining his reasoning, and he had legitimate cause to distribute his estate unequally, given Mr. Marcus Reid's unpaid debt and documented attempts to control his father's life." My hand started shaking. This was it. The will is upheld in its entirety. Mr. Marcus Reid receives $50,000. Ms. Emma Reid receives the house and remainder of the estate. Court costs will be paid by the contesting party. Marcus had to pay court costs. That detail made Patterson smile for the first time in months. He gambled and lost, Patterson said as we left the courthouse. That penalty clause your father included means Marcus now gets nothing. His $50,000 is revoked due to the contest. I stopped walking. Nothing, but the judge said $50,000. Read the will clause again. If Marcus contested and lost, his inheritance was reduced to $1. The judge upheld the will, including that clause. $1. Dad's final protection, his last way of ensuring Marcus couldn't hurt me without consequences. Marcus appeared in the courthouse lobby as we were leaving. He looked 10 years older, his expensive suit rumpled, his face haggard. Emma, wait. I stopped, but didn't turn around. I'm sorry, Marcus said, and his voice cracked. I'm sorry for everything. I know I can't undo it, but I need you to know I'm sorry. I turned slowly. My brother stood there, broken, defeated, finally understanding what his choices had cost him. I don't forgive you, I said quietly. Maybe someday, but not now. You made Dad's last years miserable. You tried to steal his independence, and you've spent months trying to destroy me. Marcus's eyes filled with tears. I know, and I have to live with that. Yes, you do. I walked away, Patterson beside me, and I didn't look back. 6 months after the trial, the house finally felt like home. I'd painted the bedrooms, updated the kitchen, planted new flowers in Mom's garden. Lily had friends over for the first time, their laughter filling rooms that had been too quiet. I'd also started the Thomas Reid Foundation, using part of Dad's estate to help seniors facing elder abuse. Patterson served on the board, along with Harold and Aunt Carol. Our first client was a woman whose son was trying to force her into a nursing home against her will. We gave her free legal help, and she kept her independence. Marcus and I hadn't spoken since the courthouse. I heard through Carol that he'd sold his house, downsized his life, that Victoria had left him. Part of me felt sad about that. He was still my brother, despite everything, but mostly I felt relief. Dad had protected me. Armed me with truth and documentation, and his own clear voice explaining his choices. Marcus had counted on silence, on family loyalty preventing exposure. He'd been wrong. I stood in the garden one Saturday morning, Lily helping me plant tulip bulbs for spring. The house rose behind us, solid and permanent, filled with memories of Mom and Dad, now making new memories with my daughter. Mom, Lily said, do you think Grandpa can see us? I looked up at the sky, at the clouds moving slowly overhead. Yeah, baby. I think he can, and I think he's proud. Because I'd done what Dad asked. I'd stood firm. I'd protected what he'd built, not just the house but his dignity, his right to make his own choices. And in doing that, I'd proven that greed doesn't always win. Sometimes love wins instead. Sometimes the right documentation and a father's clear voice from beyond the grave are enough to defeat a brother's cruelty. That's what I learned from Thomas Reid, and that's what I'll teach Lily as she grows up in this house he left us.